Good morning and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN Content Capital. Yes, I'm very happy because I'm in my seat and this is my seat. Just letting everybody know.
Oh gosh, you want to reveal the behind the scenes seat, the musical chairs, Keaton?
Well, I don't need to introduce my co-host. You've heard his voice. Mr. Sean Michael Small is alongside me following AM Prime this morning.
Yes, yes. So this is my second stint of the day. Hopefully the viewers will be having their second fill of me, and hopefully we won't have anybody call and say that it's 2 times too many, or at least 1 time too many.
Oh my God, a second fill of Sean.
That's right.
Lord. Anyway, also with us this morning via Zoom is a former Minister of Finance, attorney at law, intellect, and our good friend here at WESN. And let me just, hint, somebody who is dedicated to Talking Point, Miss Karen Nunes Teixeira. Good morning, Karen. Good to see you.
Good morning, Keaton. Good morning, Sean. And yes, I'm sure they're not tired of either of you, because when I'm out on the road and going places, I hear about those 2 boys. They call you 2 boys, 2 young men. It's excellent, excellent. So they're not tired of you, neither of you, I have to say. And certainly I am not, and I'm sure the viewers are not.
Well, that's certainly good news, Karen, and that certainly gives us a boost to continue doing what we're doing, because we must admit at times it really drains your energy having to have such discussions, but we find them so crucial and important that we don't shy away.
So, of course, we are at an interesting point with our country right now, and I think we just had it in our News on the Hour segment where, the Prime Minister, he went abroad to have some talks with some foreign energy companies. I'd like to start off with that topic. And I mean, Karen, I haven't been able to have any conversations with you on air or even off air for the last couple of weeks. So you and I haven't necessarily discussed any of the recent happenings of TNT with regards to how things are going with the energy sector. Let me just throw the first question to you. Are you having any hope, or does this engender any hope with regards to the new business that we might see from the energy sector that about maybe last year seemed to be quite ready to pull out of TNT, but now it seems as though they want to come back?
Yeah, but I want to start with ProBan because it is just a matter of coincidence that I am familiar with it. Not only because at the time we took over, when I say we took over, the government through the MOU had the central bank have control under the Act over both insurance and financial, the financial companies of the holding company, CL Financial. But many people didn't know, and actually there was a judgment last year, and I actually was a witness as a former minister who signed the MOU. Getting straight to the point, the court, Devinder Ramprasad was the judge, and you can go to the 2021, I think about September, the judgment was delivered, where he determined that the sale of ProMan shares by CL Financial, because they had 51%, they had the controlling shares under the shareholders agreement. And I think Clico owned maybe 17%, or it was the other way around, and CL Financial owned together 51%. So the judge determined, 1, it was in breach of the MOU because the sale took place on February 3rd after the MOU was sold and after the CL Financial agreed that if any dealings would end shareholding of ProMan and therefore be control of ProMan. So the judge ordered that the sale be set aside, that the amount, I think it was 46 million, that the 46 million be returned to ProMan, and that the real value of the shares plus interest, which would be, I think it was over 86 million plus the thing, be that the ProMan be ordered to pay that to CL and therefore to the government through the central bank, and that they restored the 51% shareholding that CL Financial and Clico had, which is in the hands of the central bank. So it strikes me as more than peculiar that the Prime Minister and his Minister of Energy have made this trip to Switzerland to deal with ProMan, because I am not aware that there was any application to challenge the decision of the judge. And as far as I'm aware, we own, that is through the central bank, we own 51% of Proman in Trinidad and Barbados, which is a huge undertaking. They are the ones making the methanol and ammonia and so on. And so I am at a loss to find out what is going on. And this again goes to this kind of obfuscation, where they close on, was it train one and didn't want to tell you they really had to close it down. I don't know what the Prime Minister is doing in Switzerland with the Minister of Energy. Is he selling out the Proman shares? And how much is he selling it for? And why is he selling it when methanol and ammonia shares are going through the roof? I don't quite understand what is going on. With regard to the second point about the economy, I spoke to someone who should be very well versed on how these things are worked out. And he says when you're working out revenue, which is your tax to these oil companies or gas companies, it's done on two bases. One, price, but also production. And we know that the production absolutely is not there. In fact, Heritage was boasting about how well they did, but we know it is external factors. And in fact, S&P gave them a BB rating with a negative outlook, which is just below it's in a non-investment position. Not speculative, but non-investment. And the Trinidad and Tobago holding company, of which Heritage, Paria, and the oil company, I can't remember what they call it now, the Petrotrin, what they call forgive me, they together have made some significant losses. So what that tells you is, in spite of the increase in prices, significant increase in prices, both in oil and gas, the production is not there. And that might account, one, for why the revenue perhaps is not what it should be, and why the Minister of Finance, when he made his mid-year review, talked about putting money into the HSF and quoted the legislation about once it's over 10% of the budgeted amount. Well, it's way past the budgeted amount for both gas and oil, $3.65 for gas, $65 for oil, way past that. And yet they have not been, he has not said anything about putting money in, which he said he was doing, and I don't know what's going on there. And finally, I think we have to understand that the production simply is not there. I mean, the production in gas, if you look, they did a deep water round bid, only 3 of the 17 was taken up.
4.
And that is because production is not there. And I don't know if that affects the government's revenue take from the oil companies. I don't know. They know the answers, and they know the answer why they went to Switzerland to speak to Proman. I don't have the answer to those things.
Karen, I must say that if you are unsure, then Sean and I will be completely baffled as to what is taking place. I mean, this continued fascination, it would seem, with Proman and its relationship with Trinidad and Tobago continues, because for the last 2 years at least, and over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic up until this point, the company that we've spoken most about as it relates to energy in Trinidad and Tobago is Proman. Yes, we focused on BPTT and Shell because of the deep water bids that you mentioned. And yes, we spoke about Atlantic Energy because of Train Line 1 and its failure. However, Proman really has been at the forefront of the conversation. To see the Prime Minister travel to Switzerland to meet with executives of Proman and then to Germany, you really have to wonder whether or not this is good news. To the common man reading it at first glance, you would think this is good opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago, and you were hoping for more direct investment because, as one daily newspaper reported, Proman is going to continue its $1.1 billion investment in Trinidad and Tobago. However, with everything that you've just pointed out there, it always shows that there is also some underlying cause. And whilst we may not know the truth of it, how is it going to affect us in the long run? Now, as you mentioned productivity, I had the opportunity to speak to Conrad Enel yesterday on another program here on the station. And I asked him directly about the situation surrounding productivity, oil and gas production in Trinidad and Tobago. Because he spoke more or less that we're benefiting from an unfortunate situation, and yes, the price which is greater than what we've budgeted for, certainly we're seeing some benefits from that. But the issue now, as you mentioned, has always been productivity. What he mentioned to me was not entirely surprising, but obviously very much indirect response that I was hoping for. He mentioned the relationship of Guyana and the fact that Ghana is benefiting from oil and gas prices, how Ghana is seeing its budget climb every single year, and its revenue intake climbing as well. He says Trinidad and Tobago, there are currently talks ongoing so that Trinidad and Tobago and Ghana could see some beneficial relationship, because Trinidad and Tobago has the infrastructure, which Ghana does not. So we're hoping that comes on board. But that does not address the issue of productivity. Now, the good news is that with the mango field, which I think was mentioned a couple years ago, and BPTT hoping to start, I think later this year, I'm not entirely sure the exact timeline. I know sometime later this year, they estimate, I think, 1 or 2 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. I mean, hopefully that ramps up production, but certainly that will impact upon our revenue, because we've always been taught, we've always been told that we gain our revenue from these companies based off of taxation. And if a company's revenue is higher, productivity will always affect its revenue. Then that'll also affect the taxation that we gain, and that will affect our revenue as well. So certainly, ProMon is one thing, productivity is another, but overall, it's where is Trinidad and Tobago going to benefit from this in the long run?
Well, just to be quick, according to reports, BPTT's production has dropped over the last 2 years to more or less half. So I guess the question is, how much are we really benefiting? We're seeing new investment, and we've heard of other fields and discoveries, but how long will it take to get those things online? Because the Prime Minister could go to Europe and say, we have gas, we have gas, we have gas. But as Karen said, she was questioning production even when she was speaking earlier. So if the production is not there, how are we supposed to sell this gas if production is not just not there, it's declining? It seems to be steadily declining. BPTT is trying to reverse that decline in their production. Can we get new fields? Are there new fields? Dragon, what is it that we're having to deal with using or leveraging, whether we like it or not, the situation in Europe to North America and say, hey, look, your allies need energy. We need gas. There's gas here. We're sharing it with Venezuela. What could we do? Lighten up on something so we could get it out there. Karen, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I just want to say that I think, having spoken again to someone who is well versed in these areas, said to me, well, Ghana is the thing about Guyana is that to bring the gas line to Trinidad from Guyana is going to be more expensive. It's longer than it is from bringing it from Venezuela to, I think there's a point at which it would meet, and then from there, then it would go to the downstream industries and so on. So I think the Dragon Field is where, and I think we did the separation with the Manatee. But the long and short about it is that if you look at the CSO's report which was published in one of the newspapers, it showed a decline in our economy,
yes,
our GDP, our economy from growth to a negative 4% compared to Q4 of 2021. And you would have thought that if Q1 of 2022 with oil and gas prices going through the roof, that could not have had actually a decline from the last quarter of 2021, which is where your fiscal year begins. So I think there's something to be said, which I do not know the answer to, is what is the situation with the revenue and GDP? Because the Minister of Finance was at great pains to tell you, do not mix up revenue with GDP. GDP is all the value of the goods and services produced. Revenue is the taxes. And as I was told, when you're dealing with the oil companies, it's not just a matter of price, it's price and production. And the last one I want to make, the 1.1 billion you talked about is over 10 years. And then I asked myself, why would the government be in any negotiations he went with the Minister of Energy, by the way, if he's in to sell off these shares to ProMan? Why would you do that when ProMan with methanol and ammonia is doing extraordinarily well? Why would you do that when you just won a case? I was a witness in the case. They brought me in there as the person who signed the MOU and to show that we didn't know that CL Financial had the ProMan shares and that they went like a thief in the night and sold it off at a great undervalue. And you have a great judgment. You can go to the you can go to our the judiciary, and you can find it. It's in 2021. The judgment was delivered in December 2021. CL Financial and CLICO, which is the central bank, versus Proman Barbados, Proman Trinidad. You could read it yourself. The 275-page judgment is true, but just go to the decision that was made. So something is not right. Something is not right. And TPL, Tobago Petroleum Limited, has made a huge loss. And even Heritage, you know what's the rating from S&P? BB negative outlook.
Yeah.
I mean, let's get real, you know?
Karen,
if you don't have the gas, you can't. The only thing, let me just say one last thing. The only thing that saves us is the LNG. Because of what's going on in Europe and Russia, they don't want to use the pipeline. So they want to have another way of the gas being delivered to them, especially for winter. So LNG is the alternative. And it takes time to build up the infrastructure. It takes time to build the ships. So from that point of view, we are going to make money from the LNG component, but you still need the gas. And where's it coming
very
from?
quickly, before we go to a commercial break, I have a point to make. But
Keaton, let me just ask you. So Proman is investing, or they say they reiterated their commitment of 1.1 billion. So then with what Karen just said, could this be a quid pro quo? My pronunciation messed that up, but you understand what I'm saying, right?
I understand what you're saying, but I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. But I just wanted to very quickly, what you're stating there in relation, I just want to go back to productivity because we do have to take a commercial break. I just want to mention that the quarterly profits, if you take a look at the second quarterly profit, Saudi Aramco made over $48 billion in profit. All right, Shell made over 10 billion. PPTT made over 7 billion. These are actually, 9.2 billion. These are actually record figures for 2 decades for these companies. Saudi Aramco actually beat its figures last year by almost double, right? It doubled in last year. So bear in mind, obviously,
we're getting something.
Yes. But our
transfer
production
pricing
levels,
is part of the problem, eh?
Yes.
So
transfer pricing is part of the problem.
So speaking to Vivek Charan now, just to throw this out there for you all, part of the discussion he had was, for the private sector, for our economy, maybe as we're getting something from energy, maybe the duties, the cost of shipping is killing us. Maybe we could see some ease up there. That's what he's hoping for the budget. I don't know, because as these energy prices give us more revenue, it's killing the rest of the economy.
Or maybe if there's less government interference in doing business across Trinidad and Tobago, maybe that in itself might help the situation. Folks, let's take a break here on the program. When we return, well, the conversation continues. We'll be right back after this.
Chantwell Vibes, a musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m. Featuring 3 Canal, Mavis John, Ataclan, Empress Ajay, Stacy Sobers, and panist Natasha Joseph. Tickets, $300. Available at Crosby's Music Center, St. James. Extra Foods, Rima, Grand Bazaar, and Endeavour. Online at Island E-Tickets. Committee members at 678-2843 or 482-3111. Central Bank box office on the day of the event. Mart's Liquor Palace, Diego Martin Main Road, La Puerta. A musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Welcome back, folks, to Talking Point. And, of course, we have a topic that the professor will probably want to weigh in when he calls in later. And that is with regards to collecting revenue, more specifically, tax revenue. And now I'm phrasing it with regards to alleviating the budget deficit with better tax collection. But tax collection goes beyond that. I mean, right now, in this time, and we'll get onto this topic later, is it something that the population might even want to hear, Keaton, with regards to better tax collection? Because that translates to more tax collection, enforcement of tax collection.
Tax avoidance is a serious issue here in Trinidad and Tobago. It's nothing new. And I'll be very honest with you, creating various authorities or various state entities or boards are not necessarily going to deal with that. First of all, if you're avoiding tax, that's a criminal offense. Let's just be honest with you right there. However, given that Trinidad and Tobago, its society in terms of laws and the enforcement of laws, it seems as though we're very lethargical when it comes to such. People get away very easily. The main point that we were getting at is that in conversation, not only with economist Dr. Balmikir Jr. yesterday, which we mentioned on Talking Point yesterday, but with previous conversations and other economists and financial experts, one of the areas in which we can bridge the gap between our expenditure and our revenue, so the deficit, to be more precise, is through a more efficient, a more effective tax collection system, where people who are avoiding their taxes will actually face the brunt of the law, rightfully so if they are found guilty. But at the same time, it also allows for greater revenue for the government. And that helps our situation greatly. For example, one might make the argument, and it may be a bit of a difficult argument, but that if you had a better tax collection system with better revenue coming in through that, then alone this cap on the fuel subsidy might not be a decision that was rushed to by the government. In this instance, probably they've been forced to hand, considering all economic factors. But the manufacturing sector, along with oil and gas, according to one economist, would have produced roughly $20 billion for the Trinidad and Tobago economy since since last year, between the end of last year and the beginning of this year, when expenditure across the world went up because the demand once more started rising. The supply was restricted, but demand went up. We saw the manufacturing sector in Trinidad and Tobago actually react to that in a positive manner. We saw greater productivity, and therefore that means greater income. However, again, the issue here in Trinidad and Tobago is that the revenue just does not come in. And because of, I don't know for whatever reason, I don't know why this system has remained this way. I don't know who it's benefiting or how it's benefiting. Maybe certain finances of certain parties, maybe that may be the case. It's been left to that state, it's been left in that condition. And at the end of the day, yes, you may find yourself having to pay more tax. You know what, let me not confuse you. You're not paying more tax, you know. You're not paying more tax. You're actually paying what you are supposed to pay in the first place. You know, so it's not like you're going to be paying more tax. Yes, it means more money out of your pocket, but it's nothing that is, you know, just out of the blue. It's something that should have been implemented all along. So, Karen, your thoughts and opinions, because you are former Minister of Finance. I mean, you speak often to economists, and one of the issues that we have here in Trinidad and Tobago is tax avoidance.
Okay, so let me just seem now look as though I'm defending the government, but it's not defending the government so much as putting the picture fairly as best as I can under the circumstances that we brought the topic up. It's tax avoidance is not illegal, it's tax evasion it is. So people like Trump, who have been able to beat the system by forming all kinds of companies and some companies failing so then he could write off the loss against them. There's a whole thing. And so that you find that might happen more among the business community because the government, in fairness to it, says that anyone working for less than $6,000 a month pays no tax. And I think our tax structure, when we look at America, England, Europe, people get a lot of services which you would have to pay for, which you don't recognize that those things cost money. And to give the Minister of Finance credit, I think 2 years ago, and he did it last year, and he's continuing to do that, because when I was minister, we did recognize that we were leaking at least $5 billion in domestic tax because of people not paying their taxes. And what he has done, he did it 2 years ago, he brought on a contract basis 100 accountants, people first in the accounting area. And because of that, he was able to generate a much larger increase in the taxes than he had even anticipated. And he's doing it again until the Revenue Authority is established. And that's one good way of doing it, because now you have more eyes on the pitch and you have people who are trained. The problem, I think, lies in the fact that a lot of people are self-employed. How do you manage the self-employed? And secondly, I can't say that as a fact, but I suspect that people who are involved in the gambling industry or some other kinds of industries like that may be the ones who may be the greater offenders. And I think that in all fairness, the Revenue Authority was intended not just to increase the taxation, but it was intended to have a body that was not subject to the public service regulations, so that in sensitive areas, and the sensitive areas would have been in areas of drugs and money laundering, etc., that you would have a special unit. You could not get in there just like that. There were a lot of tests involved, and we haven't done that. So that is going to account for a lot of the tax leakage. But there has been an effort by the government by hiring additional staffing. It is not illegal to avoid tax, it's illegal to evade tax. So people give to charities, they do all kinds of simmy-dimmy. So at the end of the day, go to the accountants. Some people say they cook any books, but it's not good, you know.
Karen, so, I just actually want to thank you for the correction on tax avoidance and tax evasion. Yes, I have to admit that I know the difference. I just got it confused in my monologue.
That's
but
okay.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Well, I just want to clarify something, Karen. You said that when you all looked into it, basically TNT at the time you were the Minister of Finance was losing out potentially on about $4 billion in revenue.
5 billion.
5
yeah,
billion.
About 5 billion domestically.
So domestically.
Domestic tax. Huh?
Okay. So, I mean, now I think this gives a lot more credence to the professors. Well, I'm not too sure if he was limited to tax, if he also meant revenue for water services and things like that with WASA, because that's also could be debated. But that's beyond the scope of this topic, I guess I should say. So, 5 billion is a lot, folks, because I believe the deficit started off at 10 billion or somewhere around that figure.
I think our deficit is now, about around 6 billion.
Right, because we got more revenue from the energy.
They anticipate it'll be 2 billion though.
Right.
They anticipate, the Permanent Secretary says that we anticipate by the end of the fiscal year, the revenue would have increased by 8 billion and close the deficit to 2 billion only. So that was the good news that they have given us. And she's fairly sure that that would be correct.
Yeah, because I believe 8 billion was a figure that was floated there. The point I want to make now is While that figure, that 5 billion potentially, it might be more now in 2022, it might be less, you know, we don't know what the details are.
Could be more.
Probably more, or at least around that figure. Speaking of Vivek Charan, president of the the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers, he thinks that duties, the private sector, the potential of more inflationary shocks on the horizon with the uncertainty of global trade and the price of energy, etc., import duty seems to be something that potentially could be a relief valve for the private sector. The duties on some consumer goods seems to be way out of proportion of the necessity of it. He said it was 40% duties to import a goldfish. Now, to some extent, folks, I don't understand even how you get to that number, but, you know, it is what it is. My only thing is, could potentially, now this is one area where he's saying cut taxes, could potentially, if cutting taxes could help deal with some of the global inflationary pressure, the external pressure to our own rising cost of living, could more taxes also negatively impact? I mean, the answer seems obvious, but given the circumstances all around, right, our inflationary pressure now? Because ideally, more taxes means better and more government services that could counterbalance that, but implementation is a problem.
Remember, this is where we should not make the mistake. It's not more taxes. It is the enforcement of the system in terms of collection. And that is why Karen made the correction in terms of tax avoidance and tax evasion. So we're not saying, okay, more taxes. Nobody wants more taxes. Nobody's arguing for more taxes. What the suggestion is that, and even the Minister of Finance agreed with this at the spotlight of the economy. I have to say that I think that was one of the few points that I actually agreed with that he made at the spotlight of the economy, is that Trinidad and Tobago needs to have better collection.
Well, can I rephrase then?
Sure.
The $5 billion that could be collected will be coming out of the private sector. Could that have a negative unintended consequence? Or is the negative unintended consequence of taking out that $5 billion overshadowed by the benefits of having the system run properly?
It will be overshadowed because obviously with private sector and with capitalism, you always want your profits to be high. You always want your profits this month to be better than next month, this week to be better than last week. So by them having to pay out more money, and not unjustly, let's get that clear, not unjustly, there would be some level of dissatisfaction, and the private sector may want to argue otherwise.
Well,
and I think this is why it's important, and I can't stress this enough. Not more tax, not unjustly paying taxes, but taxes that are due and are aligned with the laws of Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, that $5 billion figure there, Karen, was that just from corporations and businesses, or did that also include private citizens?
It was just across the board. At that point in time, when we were trying to set up the Revenue Authority, that was one of the major points to be made. And I remember the figure very well because I myself was taken aback. The level of non-compliance and the amount, as Keaton is saying, enforcement. But I don't know if we want to so much focus on, yes, we do need to focus on tax collection because that means you have more money in here to spend, like if you had a business. What you want to do is then set off that by creating more avenues to produce for the economy so that you're not taking that increased tax to pay off recurrent expenditure, to pay WASA, to pay TNTech, to pay the VAT refunds, to pay the contractors, and then when you finish doing all of that, you have nothing left. So what I think the government needs to be doing is, whilst it enforces it, and that not only goes for domestic, it goes for the oil companies. There's something there that we don't know. And ProMan is another good example. What we need to do is to hear from the government that whilst we're doing this and do the things that are needed. So, by the way, let me just say this before I forget. You're talking about, these people talk about import duty, but do you not, we have to understand that 80% of our food is imported. The last report from the Inspector Financial Institution Monetary Report, he said that it increased by 20% for the year. Who is importing this food? And if it is high-end food, why aren't they paying a high tax? If you want to eat all kinds of fancy cheeses, all kinds of fancy hams, and all power to you. I may be one of them. But if you target that, when they tell you they want to pay less import duty, a major part of our bill is our food import bill. So what you should be doing is saying that when we get this additional taxes, we are going to do like Holland, that is so tiny, because it's the second largest global exporter of food. We are going to build the agro industry, and we're not just going to give it to the big, large conglomerates. We are going to take the little man and start a agriculture and agro industry, just like they did with the petrochemical. Why they cannot do that? It's not just about the tax. The tax is for a purpose. The purpose is to pay things, but also for capital expenditure, for your highways, for your roads that everybody benefits from. But also to use it to increase production in other areas, start growing something, doing something else. I just don't understand it.
Karen, if I can just add to what you're stating, I agree with you. The other sector as well, that okay, if we're going to have a better tax collection system, if we're also going to look at avenues to decrease our expenditure when necessary, as also will allow us to preserve our, well, not preserve, but rather be more conservative with our foreign exchange. The other avenue that we have to look at improving as well is obviously the ease of doing business in Trinidad and Tobago. Obviously the ease of doing business. I mean, come on. Micro, small to medium businesses here in Trinidad and Tobago have struggled. They have found it so difficult. Even from what we've been told, their accounts, for one reason or the other, have been blacklisted by banks. Some of them, up to this point, actually cannot get a justification. And this is what the regional chambers and the chambers of commerce have been actually speaking about. But Karen, hold on.
Keaton, can I just say this?
Very, very quickly, Karen.
Hold it on, because I come only on a Wednesday, because it follows what you're saying.
Very, very quickly, very quickly.
Okay, when you talk about the manufacturing sector, who is it that's benefiting? It's all the big businesses. And the number one thing that UNDP, WHO, all of them have said is what is a major cause of lack of development in a country is income inequality. So when you're talking about these sectors doing well, a man in the street is not doing well because his salary is not a living wage, right? So what you need to be focusing is not the sector, but the people.
Karen, I'm sorry, but we have to end it there. We have to go on a break, folks.
Yes,
when we come
I'm
back,
sorry.
we will have more from. We'll have more from Karen and Shara after the break, folks. We'll be right back.
Delivered nationwide. Kissed enriched bread.
Fill your day with love.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Well, oftentimes, Karen on the program references the Netherlands as being the second largest exporter of food in the world, though being one of the smaller nations within the European Union. And just to give you some figures, actually inflation within the Netherlands right now is roughly 9.2%. Why? Because of low supplies due to production, as well as high energy prices. That's the only reason why. In fact, their economy is still projected to grow by 2.2%, and interesting enough, inflation to drop by 4.8%. But their gross domestic product is one of the highest in the world, and their economy is the 8th freest in the world. Meaning the ease of doing business in the Netherlands, well, we can't compare Trinidad and Tobago to the Holland at all. But anyway, as we continue with this conversation, segue in from the last topic into this topic. We're speaking about civil unrest here in Trinidad and Tobago, because if you have not noticed, well, let me remind you, every week, almost every day now, there are fiery protests. There are protests. This morning in Rosilac, from what I understand, residents woke up early, blocked the road with tires and debris, lit it on fire. 3 individuals were actually arrested from that protest this morning. Due to many circumstances, yes, my co-host, the cost of living has increased. It's going up all the time. Karen just mentioned something which is extremely important, which we do not focus on often enough on this program, and I hope we will from now, which is income inequality in Trinidad and Tobago, which is also a part of civil unrest. Utilities. We have such an unreliable supply. And listen, the Minister of Public Utilities could come and tell me whatever he wants to tell me. Clearly, he has a generator hooked up to his house all the time, and clearly he has 10 water tanks in his yard, because his supply must be endless. Education in Trinidad and Tobago, the cost of going back to school, I don't know, a second edition textbook is costing $100 more than the first edition, and is only 1 letter or 1 word changing in the textbook. And then finally, the Minister of Education seems absolutely clueless and is continuing a campaign, even though the campaign ended 2 years ago when they won elections. Because from what I understand, schools, there are some schools who are actually putting students, as we speak, on a rotation, where you're coming this day, you're not coming tomorrow because other classes have to come tomorrow. They can't accommodate all students because of ongoing repair works. Infrastructure is damaged. Over the last 2 years, we've been locked down. So forgive my rant this morning, but the entire genesis of my point is simple. Civil unrest in Trinidad and Tobago is growing. And whilst I'm not encouraging anything, because I must be very careful that you do not take my words as though I'm trying to push or encourage anything, what I am seeing and what I'm hearing on the ground is disturbing. The reality is people are frustrated, people are fed up, and quite frankly, it seems as though our government and our opposition, which in my opinion forms part of the government, is completely oblivious to the plight of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Sean, did I state anything new in my rant, or is it just basically a repeat of what happens week after week?
There is still things. There are still factors that you weren't even able to get to in your rant. I'll give Karen the floor, and then I'll speak after. Because again, with regards to income inequality, I think COVID has revealed weaknesses in various nations and societies, and this income inequality thing is not necessarily new, but it might be something that is worsening, and I don't know if the solutions to rectify the problem, or at least alleviate the impact, are anywhere near to fruition or implementation. Karen?
Oh dear, sorry, I don't have the kind of time I would wish to have, but I know we have limitations. So they say income inequality, and that's because if you look at UNDP and all the large international organizations, they say income inequality is a major, but when you have And there's something that they use to measure. It's not perfect, but it's called a Gini coefficient. And it was used in Trinidad and by the CSO until 1991, and then they stopped. They told me they couldn't give me a reason why. But what it really tells you is that if a country earns, let's say $100 million, right, for the year in goods that they produce for whatever reason, and then you say, let's spread that among the population. You have a big population, 1.3 million. So everybody gets a share. Well, then you'll find out how much it would be if you did it that way. But if you look at the Gini coefficient, what it really tells you that of that 100 million, it gives you an indication of that 100 million, 5% of the population is getting 70 million of that 100 million. And the rest of the population is getting 30 million. And that is what is the cause of tension, especially what they have said. It increases in urban areas, urban poverty, because they are living out just in this enclave and seeing outside of their enclave these cars, these fancy homes, these fancy restaurants, and there's a building sense of resentment. This is not Trinidadian, this is a general statement. And if you want to understand what Keaton is saying, that they, he's saying it anecdotally, but I could give an example that I feel shows that the population, regardless of political views, is fed up and they can't vote right now. Tutor. I mean, tutor is across the board. And for the fact that that tutor rest day was so successful is an indication of the lack of trust, confidence that the people have in this government. Tutor. Tobago, the licks that the PNM got in from our wee boy, that is another indication of how the country feels. And of course, I use these two as a good metaphor of how this government has continued to insult you and me and the population. And guess what? People are waking up and understanding how much are we going to take? How many excuses are you going to give? And the two examples I'm going to use, the scrap iron closure. But actually, I could use Petrotrin too. That's a good one. But scrap iron closure. You close it down. I don't really understand why you did it without a plan. And then when you turn around, you say, okay, we'll give you subsidies. Is that the answer? How about starting them in B micro and enterprise? How about having a plan to start them into little businesses with the agriculture and agro industry? But you just close it down and the answer is subsidies. Another example, Lake Asphalt. Kevin Ramnaran has gone on another show. I don't know if he said it here, but the last time audited accounts were given was in 2015 and they made a profit of 37 million. Since then, the PS has gone to the Ministry of Works, have no audited accounts, and the government is giving a subvention of 2.5 million a month to pay salaries for a company that's not working, because it's not manufacturing the most important thing, bitumen, which it got from Petrotrin, which the government shut down. So you want to look at inefficiency, you want to, and then I want to just say that regard to your praise for the manufacturing sector, I look at things not from the sector's point of view. I don't look at it necessarily from the business point of view. Maybe if we did that, that's what's probably contributing to the income inequality, because they just look at their profit margin and they don't look at the implications down the line. So when they talk about the manufacturing sector, who is benefiting from that? Are the people working in these sectors getting a living wage? Because one of the things they try to cut is their salaries. One thing they try to cut is their salaries. And ask for last for that WASA. They knew the answer. I spoke to a former Minister of Public Utilities who told me that they have all of those pipelines sitting on there. It's a whole situation which I can't get into today, another time with WASA. It's a distribution. For example, just one example, Point Fortin gets its water all the way from Caroni Arena. And why? Because Point Fortin water is brackish and it's not potable. You cannot drink it. But by the time the water goes through every level and the leakages that it goes through, and then you're servicing all of these communities as you're coming down the line, by the time it reaches to Point Fortin, you're in trouble. And that is the story of when the minister talks about the distribution thing. The metering is a good example thing, because the Minister of Public Utilities at the time when I was in government was the worst year of drought. We got so scared we were actually thinking of bringing in water from Dominica. But do you know, he said, a lot of the problem with people letting their tanks fill up, and because you're low on the water line, you would get no water would come to you because the leakages on the line, but using those tanks, letting them overflow. And when the government put down their foot and had these people coming around as looking to see if you're putting on the water for your loan, he said, normally we use 75 million or whatever, but that year we used 35 million. So it has a lot to do with the lack of discipline, the poor distribution, the leaking, and the fact that the government will not change the pipes. And finally, every time they offer VTEP and VSEP, guess what? The numbers go right back up because you do not offer alternatives to employment for these people. So, you know,
so
that's what I have to see.
Now, so Karen is pointing out a lot of examples with regards to our local economy. I will now speak to the obvious international boogeymen, because it's low-hanging fruit. It's easy to say that inflation from energy, from food prices, linked to Ukraine, that's causing a lot of stress and pressure. We don't necessarily have perfect tools to deal with that, and cost of living increases are creating unrest. According to Business Insider, a UK-based risk consulting and intelligence firm said that is going on in 101 out of 198 countries that they looked into. So we're not alone with regards to the external pressure now, adding to our internal pressure, because I will agree with both of you that we have some serious internal problems. And one thing that I want to go to, two things I want to go to beyond just cost of living increases. One is the combative politics. We have a report about a phrase that the Alderman Susan Holder, a statement she made last week. I don't want to get into details. It was not a nice thing that she said. I find that the combative politics riles up the voters, and now it gets into a blame game, as opposed to trying to find solutions to problems like WASA. All of these things with the wage negotiations, all of these things, what it turns into a political bubble. Do we actually get solutions? No, and I think it causes the citizens now to be combative as well with regards to when they see a problem and an injustice. Not only do they not have a proper outlet because the government at times is so inefficient, they can't get them any solutions, but also their leadership is encouraging them to be combative. And then the other thing now, going to with regards to government services, there's an example, we will eventually get into this, but I don't want to go into details now, but it's basically government services that are offered for free, and the public servants are gatekeeping them and extorting money from citizens to access these services that were said to be free. And that, I cannot emphasize how frustrated and upset I am about a situation like that. That is completely ridiculous, especially when some of these public servants are demanding for more money, protesting, not providing services, going on rest and relaxation, right? Not reflection, relaxation. And then they want more money from the government, and then they're extorting more money from their fellow citizens as well.
I think I want to add to what you're stating before we go to the 9 o'clock news. With Karen, what she stated in relation to closing down things, yes, I still see the closure of the scrap iron industry for the 6 months as a complete and utter failure on the part of the government, because quite frankly it shows that Fitzgerald Hines has absolutely no brains. And that the Attorney General at the same time, he was a part... No! I make no joke about it. They had no clue what to do. They had no other... so we're going to close down an entire industry for 6 months.
Maybe they did, or so, maybe they did, and we don't
possibly, know. Right? So maybe a smart manism with an idiot involved. Probably, I don't know, right? At the same time, what you also mentioned, that combative nature. Yes, it's true, we're seeing combative nature now taking place in politics. It's the worst I have ever seen. Listen, Bastio Panay and Patrick Manning could have debated each other, but they had a decorum and a respect about each other still. They still had a level of respect about each other, right? True. And the level of debate that you would have witnessed in the Red House, in the walls of Parliament, versus what you're seeing today from young, immature politicians who are following arrogant, older heads, quite clearly is not working.
Just quick, let me point out, you see the same example in America. Combative politics, they're talking about civil war.
But this is the thing. Hold on, Karen.
Since you only let me come on a Wednesday, can I just say, yes, that's what I'm going to use. That's going to be my clarion call from now on. It is going to be my clarion call from now on.
Quick.
I just want to say something on the in the inflation rate. The inflation rate of 5% is nothing to crow about. The reason is, and it's said in the day, is because there's low consumer confidence. When you do not, if you look at America, it's 10%. The number one measure of the strength and the confident economy is retail. It's a RFI. In Trinidad, it is because there's low consumer confidence. However, even though the inflation rate is so low, when you pull out the food inflation, it's beyond 7%. And as Dr. Arjun said yesterday, what's the point of talking about all this talk about giving a little bit more when people cannot even live on what you have? And why are you allowing so much food to be imported? Who is benefiting? That's the question you have to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Why are we importing so much food?
Karen,
why are we doing that?
We're going to have to take a break for news.
Okay,
but
so that's my point.
When we return, I want to make my point of what Sean was making in relation to combative politics, because because we're seeing it in society now. Let's take a break for news. When we return, we open up the phone lines. Stay tuned.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Sinclair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Prime Minister continues energy talks in Germany. 2 more murders recorded overnight. Procedural hearing of Commission of Inquiry into Paria trading divers tragedy begins today. And internationally, 7 drowned in flooded South Korean car park. Now for the details. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and David Cassidy, Chief Executive of Proman, traveled from Zurich, Switzerland to the company's office in Dusseldorf, Germany on Tuesday. They both met with leaders driving the energy company's global projects with a view to exploring opportunities for further development in Trinidad and Tobago. Dr. Rowley and Energy Minister Stuart Young received a detailed presentation surrounding Proman's technology and innovation approach and its applicability to the local industry. Future projects, including proposals related to upstream gas projects and proposals related to carbon capture, utilization and storage, featured heavily at yesterday's talks. A shooting in Valencia has left 1 man dead and 2 others injured. That is Michael Tramcombe. He was gunned down after gunmen ambushed the group. Also injured and listed in stable condition was Anthony Hopkins, while Calden Lopez was listed in critical condition. Meanwhile, in Chrissy Trace Enterprise, a man was also shot and killed. Investigations into both incidents are ongoing. The Commission of Inquiry procedural hearing into the Paria fuel trading divers tragedy, which occurred in February, will begin today.
The investigatory stage, then you have the evidential hearing stage in which you have the evidence and the addresses of counsel. And then you have the stage where the commission gives its report. We are now at the investigatory stage in which letters were written, public notices were published, so that persons who are interested can send their submissions in. And the commission has the power to consider those statements and in the investigation to request other persons to give evidence, and the commission has the power of the High Court to even enforce the attendance.
In international news now, 7 people in South Korea have died after they were trapped in an underground car park during floods caused by Typhoon Hinamur. They had gone down to move their cars but got caught by the incoming torrents. Crew said they rescued 2 people who reportedly survived by clinging to ceiling pipes for more than 12 hours. Well, that was News to the Hour on WESN. I am Denise Sinclair. Thanks for watching.
Shantwell Vibes, a musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m. Featuring 3 Canal, Mavis John, Ataclan, Empress Ajay, Stacy Sobers, and panist Natasha Joseph. Tickets, $300. Available at Crosby's Music Center, St. James. Extra Foods, Rima, Grand Bazaar, and Endeavour. Online at Island E-Tickets. Committee members at 678-2843 or 482-3111. Central Bank box office on the day of the event. Mart's Liquor Palace, Diego Marte Main Road, La Puerta. A musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m.
Welcome back to Talking Points. I just want to finish what I was saying when my co-host pointed out the combative nature of politics. Yes, on one hand, that is absolutely true. It's the worst I've ever seen. And yes, civil unrest across the world is actually at the highest we've seen in years. That's not only for Tobago, it's across the world. It's happening across the world. However, we focus on TNT. Because we can't solve this situation outside of TNT unless we solve our problems here first. And even then, well, we're not governments of an international country. That being said, remember this issue with school violence? Because if we are to be fair, yes, those in leadership roles and positions, those who put in high authority, will always influence society. And many a times, put it this way, if you ever look at these political platforms, if you ever look at these conferences, political supporters wave their flag, dance, get on, clap, laugh at the most outrageous statements made by politicians. When you have parents in a household whose first reaction is to curse, whose first reaction is to probably instigate an argument or instigate a fight, a physical fight. I saw a lady walking with a child on the road. This was last week, Friday. I don't know what was going on with the child. She, very young, probably 2 years old, threw a little tantrum. The mother says, "I will kill you here today, boy." Don't tell me that that is how nature is and that's how people grow up and whatnot. Simple things like that translates into a child. And so when a child goes to school and gets angry or upset, what do you think their first reaction is going to be? Exactly what they see in the household as well. Let me instigate a fight. Let me start using selective language. I'm going to get physical. Listen, if my parents could do it, if my family could do it, I could do it too. Nothing wrong with that. And it's those same parents that will at the end of the day try to correct the child. Ladies and gentlemen, my entire point is, from politician to mother to brother, we are all teachers. And I hope, because we're not doing it right now, I hope we set an example. I hope we could set an example. I hope we are mature and responsible enough to realize that in our own right, we are leaders and teachers. And if we continue down this road, we're not just failing ourselves, we're failing, as somebody likes to put it, the future grandchildren of TNT. Anyway, moving forward now, it seems as though Reginald Amor, the office of Reginald Amor, the office of the Attorney General, is once more...
I think you're going to already face that, the office of Reginald Amor. That might be what it is now.
I use that term because, quite frankly, yes, it was a huge blunder, and we should not forget what happened there. Big blunder on the part of Reginald Amor.
In Miami.
Regarding the Piarco case, in the Miami Civil Court. What is happening since then is that I've actually seen things that I did not expect. Though Reginald Amor is in the Office of the Attorney General, and you would expect the Office of the Attorney General to be, obviously, a puppet to the government and to the Prime Minister, what we're witnessing here with respect to the AG stating that there will be no publication authorized by state or its agencies of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Services Firearms Unit Audit Report or any summary of that, and I quote, unless or until all persons who may be adversely affected by the report's findings are afforded the opportunity to comment and make representation on any such findings. Any consideration is being given by the government to having such affected persons report back to the Prime Minister or such other persons as the Prime Minister may direct is a complete contradiction to what Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has stated. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever thought we would see that?
I mean, you just have to ask, why would Dr. Keith Rowley want to put out something, something that basically damns those involved in the potential firearms users like it? What name you suspect or is alleged to be at the center of that firestorm, what political opponent, and then you have your answer. So yes, I did not expect that the AG of the government to potentially, and this might not be forever, it might just delay the inevitable, right? But of course, at the end of the day, if it's the truth, it's going to come out.
We need to get it correct in the program. It's not Reginald Amor. It's the Office of Reginald Amor, because it's a release from the Office of the Attorney General. So he didn't actually state it himself.
Okay, fair enough.
But that is still very, very important.
This could be a procedural thing. Karen, I don't know if you would agree with me. Perhaps he's just saying, no. You can't do it this way, because if you do it this way, you will cause some major problems with the investigation and or the court case.
I promise not to say too much, but just to remember that the Attorney General is not only answerable to the Prime Minister, but he's also answerable to the people of the country. So he holds a dual function, unlike other ministers. It's not just the cabinet, but it's also the people. And I think that Reginald Amor is rightfully has an excellent reputation, and I think the damage that was done, he's trying to show that I think he's saying, in my opinion, that if I am not allowed to function as an AG should function, then I don't need to be here. And I commend him for what he did, because he understands rules of natural justice. He very well knows that the first thing that will happen, they will say my natural justice rights have been affected. That's what happened with the former Chief Justice when they served him on the oh no, it wasn't a Chief Justice, it was a judge. And he fought them all the way to Privy Council. He won because they did not give an opportunity to be heard. And Reginald Amor knows the rules. So you're not going to let them do him that. And I thank him also for adding 20 lawyers to DPP. Please continue. I'm so proud of you, although I think you did the wrong thing in the beginning, but you're doing the right thing. I'm proud of you.
I'd like to second what you just stated there. You see, sending 20 lawyers to the office of the DPP, I have to thank Reginald Amor for that. I have to. And I only hope this continues.
How long was that coming?
Exactly.
How long has the DPP been asking
It
for
will
that?
continue. They will continue because they can't afford to lose it.
And honestly, Faris Arawi is probably crying in his boots right now because he has local government elections coming up. And he has a lot more trees to cut. Put it that way.
Now, let me be the one to limit the discussion here. We will continue to monitor the AGs because, as Karen and Keaton both vehemently pointed out, we have to be fair and give credit where credit is due. But we also have to open up the phone lines to hear from you, the viewer. This is Wednesday afternoon. This is the one time Karen is here. I'm sure the professor is ready to come and hit us with something interesting, some curveball today. Professor, we don't disagree with you that often. But folks, if you want to speak about anything we've spoken about today, ask us anything or give your comment, or maybe something we missed, something we didn't touch on. Call in. The numbers should be up on your screen. Let us hear from you, the viewer.
Professor, I hope when you went to the bank, nobody was resting and reflecting that day. I hope you got through.
Oh, Lord. Why are calling Professor? Oh, Lord. Why had good mouth him about that for?
Also, ladies and gentlemen, let us
also known as Juju.
Juju boy, 6 months after the tragedy into the Paria fuel diving accident, the Commissioner of Inquiry is due to begin today. You can follow live proceedings at www.coe2022.com. It is open to the public, though they most likely aren't going to hear in-person trials as yet. They are going to state the procedures for the Commission of Inquiry starting from today. So www.coe2022.com. We have a caller on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Gentlemen.
Good morning.
And lady. You know, you brought a segue in it to change my whole comment that I was going to comment on this morning, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Sure.
You know, that last issue that you all talk about, Reginald Amo, I can't help but think there is something sinister in not releasing that report. I understand what Karen said about natural justice and all of that. However, I am telling you guys, one of the issues that I have with this whole thing is the amount of persons that I know of that got multiple firearm license. There was one businessman in San Fernando here. Even though when they reported it on the newspaper, they said a businessman because he has bought another business, I think in Pinar or something like that, and they didn't mention who's a PNM financer. Very close with a couple of those ministers that I know about. That man, when his driver got held with a firearm and they searched his property, that man had over 15 legal firearms. Of that 15 legal firearms, one of them was a AR-15. What businessman in Trinidad and Tobago need a AR-15? And there are many more like him, including that one that they held recently with the another one from South, who they held with the with the gun, and when they went and searched his property, he had multiple firearms, legal firearms to it, and that is the problem. And that's why I'm saying I can't help but think there's something sinister in not releasing it. Understand what Karen had to say? Karen, please. I only had my 2 minutes. So.
Thank you, caller. I just wanna put two things quick. First of all, I'm gonna say something controversial. An AR-15 is easier for people to handle. That includes women, older people, and or younger people, but particularly for women and older people. So there is some room for debate there with regards to self-defense as opposed to handguns. But I think the main thing I want to say is the Prime Minister wanted to release the reports. He's the politician, Reginald Amo is the technocrat. I will not necessarily assume bad motivations from the technocrat.
Caller, I understand your perspective, though. You can't help but think that way. In Trinidad, nobody can help but think that way. So I do understand where you're coming from. We have a caller on the line with us from El Dorado. Good morning, caller. All right, we lost that caller from El Dorado. We're sorry for keeping you so long. Good morning, caller from Port of Spain.
Good morning to you.
Morning.
It's so good to have Karen on. Why aren't we hearing and seeing from her more often? I hear pleading with you. Gentlemen, I listened to the discourse this morning, and I can't help but believe that Trinidad is really in trouble. In trouble not in a sense that we have to live in the ashes at this time, but we are allowing our nation to be burnt. And you know there's this calypso, if Trinidad burned down, we living in the ashes. Well, I feel when this country is finally burned, there won't even be ashes for you to live in.
Somebody might keep it.
And as I listened to Mrs. Nunez Teixeira this morning, or Teixeira Nunez, I couldn't help but sit back and sigh, because in a sense, she really didn't bring good news. And when you think about what is going on with the little remaining patrimony we have, if these men come back and say they have sold the Proman shares, I think this country should rise up with a crescendo and chase them out of Port of Spain. Because, forgive me, I'm not, as it were, calling violence onto the society, but I'm certainly asking the population to begin to say enough is enough and to take such action that is legal but firm. Yeah. We cannot continue to do this, because by the time the next general election is called, this country will perhaps be so broke we wouldn't even know what it is. And that is, these are the considerations that we must focus on as we speak.
Thank you.
I really want to thank Mrs. Teixeira Nunes this morning for all the education she provided us in viewer land here.
Thank you very much, caller. We have a caller on the line with us from Chaguanas. Good morning, caller. Good morning.
Morning.
When I went to the bank, I went to the ATM. It's no problem. Unfortunately, even the ATM seemed to join it because they said they had no cash to display.
Oh, Lord.
You talk about the Attorney General, and once again, I must disagree with Karen. Being the people advisor and cabinet advisor is no conflict of interest. It's supposed to be the same. They mentioned the case with AVM drilling, and if you have a conflict, all you do is you recluse yourself from that. The real problem I see is when he went on the Piaco business, it looked like his firm itself was hired to do it. He didn't do it as the AG. So did he recluse himself from that?
He tried to, but I don't know if the AG could really recuse himself from a matter of state like that.
Of course, anybody could recluse himself.
He could have done that.
Okay.
Everybody.
Personally.
And this morning, people are talking about the FUL.
Yeah.
And you had an investigation, and they did not have any discussions with the person who they intend to find. And this is unbelievable. I really like to hear Karen on that.
Yeah.
And
Okay, give me just a quick thing on
I didn't
answer
talk
that.
about
If you
tax
see,
only. I talk about revenue.
let me just give you a
And
quick
my point,
example.
government makes no attempt to collect revenue of all time. They mash up the system itself. It's the most progressive system. Karen mentioned self-employed. She didn't mention the Inland Revenue have the authority to make sure everybody is required to keep accounts. And if they don't, they can go and assess the property for tax, which they don't do. The last stupidness they did, they gave an amnesty to NIB people who didn't submit it. Those are the problems. It is straight fundamental governance. I'll always go back to the annual administrative report.
All right, Professor.
Any questions?
Can I just say something very quickly to answer the AG? If you see someone shoot someone in your face, then let's go and hang him one time. There's something called a trial.
Yeah.
And the AG is a lawyer, and he understands even industrial relations.
What does that
You
do
know
with
how
what
many-
I say? I said there's no
No,
problem.
I think, Karen, I think you're actually agreeing on that point.
All right.
Yeah,
totally
so
off
he
the
has
record.
every right to do that.
Let
so
me
that
answer the
you can
property tax
calculate
one.
that.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor.
Okay,
Thank you very
all
much,
right.
Karen. We have a caller. We have a caller on the line with us, folks. Folks, order in the court.
Wednesday.
Order. We have a caller on the line with us from Mayaro. Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I must say, pleasant independence shown, because I've been fighting to get through with him for quite a while.
Yes, he
and
wasn't there.
I'm happy to see that his beard is growing a little longer. That means wisdom and knowledge is here.
Yeah, it's going to come off just now.
Special good morning to you too. I'm a layback man. And when I say layback, I'm a ground. I'm a farmer.
Yes.
And I hear you guys touch base on the economy. Forgive me for my words. I am not as intelligent and was brought up in the educated world as you guys. But I am confused today, as yesterday, more confused today, because I'm seeing intelligent people and hearing intelligent people and understanding intelligent vision for our future. And I am saying it's a day for I am taking months and years of reflection, still trying to bring a solution to agriculture. Because listen to me, the PNM has done well in certain areas for agriculture, for where water is essential. My area in Bristol, in food crop, has 79 5-acre plots. It has big ponds. The PNM has started well. Water is essential for food. And you know what? Nothing has been done with the land and the renewal of the land and the work with the farmers. If I get 3 or 4 greenhouses, Sean, I could stand up and I could bring commodity. I drop in a bucket to help. I can't go nowhere. I tractor and equipment and a vehicle and experience, and I can't go. I don't have no money. Everything done. I don't have workers. Let the Venezuelans come and work for me. Give me a vision, give me 10 greenhouse and give me people, let me produce food for the nation.
Yeah.
Let me get real. Let me get a solution. If the teachers take a day to reflect, it means to say, what is our solution? What is the problem with the administrative part of the school that is needed, that all need to reflect on? Let us know and let us rally for that. We want changes in this country and we just can't talk it, And Sean, I want to say thank you very much for taking the time off because we really miss you. And I want to say, Sean, you have been very vocal and continue to do the good work because I confused as a voter right now. I'm confused.
All right, caller. Sorry, we have to cut
you there. All right, caller, thank you.
We have to go for a break. I'll just say this. The one area of manufacturing that I think we do have a chance and we need to look into is agriculture and food production. It is one of the most frustrating things about that. Food production,
so much more
security.
beyond agriculture and food production and Tobago could also be a hub for alcoholic beverages as well, right? And,
oh gosh, let's not
start on that very shortly.
Too early for that, Keaton.
We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN. To the last caller from ARO, the farmer. It's good to hear from you again. I know I heard from you a lot over the last 2 weeks, but I wanted to point out to you, never ever say that you're not an educated man. Because let me tell you one time, the education that you have, Sean and I may know absolutely nothing about crop farming.
Yes.
Right? We may know nothing about cattle farming, about irrigation. We may not have that.
Important practical
skills. Yeah, we may not have those skills. So never ever downplay yourself like that. Because the mere fact that you can listen to a show, form an opinion, speak to us, that shows a level of analysis and critical thinking that we want. Even if we disagree with your opinion, it still is there. And the level of skill and education that you have, we may not have. So I disagree with you. You're an educated man, you're a skillful man, and you're a contributor to Trinidad and Tobago's development. I just wanted to put that out there. But that is where we actually have to conclude today's programming. Miss Caroline Esteshera, it's good to see you once more. Good to see your smile. We didn't have the privy of having you last week due to the independence celebrations, but nevertheless, yes, you're here once a week. So yes, you're allowed to interrupt and talk anytime. Don't worry. But thank you very much, Karen.
That's what I'm going to say from now on.
Mr. Sean Michael Small.
Thank you, and I'm pleasure to be here.
Certainly. Well, Mr. Sean Michael Small, you're hearing it from the viewers. They're happy to see you back once more after your 2.5 weeks.
I'm happy to be back. I just want to point out, it's funny how with the professor, he's very combative and there's miscommunication, because I believe that he and Karen agreed on that point. There was other points that maybe they disagree on. I think actually on that point they agreed. With regards to the firearms, as much as I said what I said about an AR-15 being easier to handle for women and older folks, that doesn't mean that it's the be-all and end-all. It's something that could be discussed. However, it might not be worth it to society. It's something that should be discussed because apparently it has already been allowed. It's already in here. And finally, extorting people for free government services. Public servants extorting people for free government services. This is something that we're going to have to continue to talk about in the future. People, I would like to hear in other shows, people call in if you have any examples of that, because that just makes me sick.
Listen, I've been held hostage by the garbage collection system before, where the men who are doing their job have asked me for $100 and a bottle of rum in order for them to collect my trash. So I know what it's like. Anyway, folks, listen, that's where we conclude this morning's show. Thank you very much to Karen, to Sean, to all our callers who contributed to the discussion. I'm Keaton Shaw. This has been Talking Points, and we'll see you again. Hold on, before we see you again, just remember, as ironic as it may be, today is a good day to have a good day.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.